Now let's look at some of the errors which are common in subordination when used by students. I'm going to give you a number of sentences with errors in them, and you'll have some time to find the error and, if possible, to correct the errors. Now, look at the first sentence. No one is admitted to the faculty unless meet the educational and professional requirements. As you can see, we have a subject in the main clause, no one. We do have our conjunction unless. What's missing is a subject in the adverb clause. That's the error. The correct sentence would be, no one is admitted to the faculty unless they meet the educational and professional requirements. Now, let's look at another example. The exam will be more challenging than usual as it's 3 chapters instead of 1. The problem with this sentence is that in your adverb clause, there is no verb. You remember we should have verbs in both clauses. So the correct sentence would be, the exam will be more challenging than usual as it covers 3 chapters instead of 1. The next example. The teacher explained the essay should have at least 4 body paragraphs. Now here you have 2 sentences or 2 clauses connected by a comma. You have subjects in both clauses. You have verbs in both clauses, but what is missing is a conjunction. As the meaning connection between the 2 clauses is manner, we need one of the conjunctions expressing manner. So the correct sentence would be, as the teacher explained, the essay should have at least 4 body paragraphs. Now the next example. Unless you have experience as a teacher, it'll be impossible to take this advanced course. Well, the sentence seems to be all right. You have a conjunction at the beginning of the sentence, unless. You have subjects in both clauses, you in the adverb clause and it in the main clause. And you do have verbs, have in the first one and will be in the second one. But what is missing in writing is a comma after the adverb clause. You remember that when you start the sentence with an adverb clause, you need a comma immediately after the adverb clause, and you need one here. So the correct sentence would be, unless you have experience as a teacher, comma, it'll be impossible to take this advanced course. Let's look at the next example. The company is planning to increase its production, although there is a high demand for smartphones. Again, everything seems to be all right. You have subjects in both clauses. There is a conjunction at the beginning of the adverb clause. The problem is meaning. If you pay attention to the meaning, you can see that there is a reason-result connection between the 2 clauses. But we're using the conjunction although, which shows a contrast, and that's not what we have. So we should use a conjunction signifying reason and result. So the correct sentence could be, the company is planning to increase its production because there is a high demand for smartphones. The next example. Jasmine had completed her essay after she consulted a number of primary source materials. The sentence seems to be all right again. You've got subjects and verbs and you have a conjunction. The problem is with the verb tenses. If you pay attention to the verb tenses, you can see that in the main clause, we have had completed, a past perfect. And in the adverb clause, you have a simple past, consulted. Now, had completed signifies that this action happened before consulting the action expressed in the simple past, which is not logically possible. Instead, it is possible to have had PP in your adverb clause, or simply because we're using the conjunction after and it shows the order of the actions, simple past in both clauses. So the correct sentence could be, Jasmine completed her essay after she consulted a number of primary source materials. Or, Jasmine completed her essay after she had consulted a number of primary source materials. Let's look at the next example. The doctor could diagnose the disease after examined the patient. It seems that in the adverb clause we have reduction. The verb doesn't make sense. What the problem is here is that we have the wrong verb form in reduction. If you use the PP in reduction, it usually signifies passive meaning, and this is not what we have here, because the sentence would mean the doctor could diagnose the disease after he was examined the patient, which doesn't make sense. So instead, it is possible to use the complete adverb clause. So the correct sentence could be, the doctor could diagnose the disease after he examined the patient. Or if you need reduction, after reducing examined the verb, you get the verb ing form. The doctor could diagnose the disease after examining the patient. Let's look at the final example. While taking a walk along the promenade, the sunset looked amazing. As you can see, your adverb clause is reduced here. But the problem is that because you've got the conjunction here, it is implied that the subject of the adverb clause and the subject in the main clause are the same. But the meaning you have here does not show that. Actually, it is not possible for the sunset to take a walk. So in these cases, you have to correct the sentence in different ways. In this example, it is not possible to have reduction. And the correct sentence would be, while I was taking a walk along the promenade, the sunset looked amazing. Now let's sum up and review subordination. If you remember, we defined subordination as a connection between two clauses in which one clause is dependent on or subordinate to another clause. The subordinate clause can work like an adverb, an adjective, or a noun, and so they are named as adverb clauses, adjective clauses, and noun clauses. Like any other kind of connection in English, to achieve subordination, you need a conjunction, a subordinate conjunction. And for the purposes of this short course, we just focused on the subordinate conjunctions used in adverb clauses. We divided them into different groups. We studied the uses and the meanings of each conjunction and how they are used. You remember that in subordination, like coordination, you need a subject and a verb in both clauses, in the main clause and in the subordinate clause. You remember that punctuation is very important when you're writing sentences with subordination. And the general rule is that if you start the sentence with an adverb clause, you need a comma. And if you start the main clause, comma is not generally used. The only exception being adverb clauses of contrast. They could have a comma before the conjunction if they're used after the main clause. Also, we discussed different verb tenses used in main clauses and adverb clauses depending on the situation and the conjunction. And finally, we looked at reduction of adverb clauses, turning them into phrases or sometimes even words. In the next lesson, we're going to look at the last way of connecting sentences, transition.
Did you enjoy it? Then subscribe, like, comment and share. Thanks for joining us.